KBLA1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got you black.
Hush now, child, and don't cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up toward your destination. Though you may find from time to time complication.
That's the goal, trying to move on up, right? We're trying to move on up. I enjoyed that conversation immensely with those three brilliant brothers, James Peterson, Michael Eric Dyson, Jamal Harrison Bryant. What an amazing half hour. I just enjoyed that, as I've enjoyed the entire program today. For that matter, every day this week. I appreciate you tuning in to the Tavis Smiley program. In this hour, as promised, on the backside of this hour, conversation, speaking of black men, with the legendary member of Congress, James Clyburn, a staunch supporter of Kamala Harris, made it clear before the president decided to step down. By the way, in case you haven't heard, the White House announced he will give a primetime address to the nation tomorrow night, Wednesday, talking about his decision to stand down and to exit the race for president. So a primetime address from the president tomorrow night. We'll be, of course, unpacking that on Thursday's program. But James Clyburn was out early on saying that if President Biden stepped aside, he would stand behind Kamala Harris. He's done just that. So we'll talk to James Clyburn on the backside of this hour. But we commenced this hour with the second part of our conversation today about the question, is democracy on the ballot? You recall we talked earlier to Otis Moss III out of Trinity Church in Chicago, the church once pastored, I should say, by Jeremiah Wright, very activist church. So Otis Moss III killed it earlier on today's program in the first part of a two-part conversation about whether or not democracy is on the ballot. Now we unpack that question with political scientist and Professor Susan Williams-Barnt, who's authored a pretty provocative piece about that very question. Is democracy on the ballot? Professor, did I pronounce your last name correctly, Barnt?
You did. Thanks a lot.
No, my name is Tavis, and I get called Travis more than I can count. So I tried not to call folk out of their name, and so I wanted to make sure I got that correct. Let me start right in and make the most of the time that we have here. First of all, give me your motivations for writing this particular piece. Is democracy on the ballot? Give me the backstory, and then we'll get into the piece itself.
Well, I think it's a question that's on a lot of people's minds. And I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher of undergraduate students. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that stood out to me earlier this year is I asked them, what's your earliest political memory? Mm-hmm. And only a few of them in the class and could really remember, and they only remembered it faintly, the second inauguration of President Obama. Mm-hmm. Most of them, I realized, were only about 9 or 10 years old when Trump got elected. And so they had no memory of American politics before Trump politics. Mm-hmm. And they were asking me these kinds of questions. Is democracy on the ballot? What does democracy even look like? How can we fix things if we've never existed in anything but what feels like a broken system? And so those questions have really been on my mind all year.
It's not lost on me that a little while ago there was a nice gathering of Team Obama to celebrate the 15th anniversary of his winning the nomination and going on to become president. 15 years already, believe it or not. And to your point now, there are folk who are of voting age who don't recall Donald Trump even coming on the scene. And so I wonder, and I never thought about it in that way, and have not asked this question of anyone. I wonder, and there's no crystal ball here. I don't have one. You don't have one. But I'm just talking out loud here. I wonder to what extent there will be a particular slice, maybe a significant slice of young people who will consider voting for Donald Trump because they don't know all the drama, all the machinations of what happened when he was president.
I think that's definitely true. They don't really have a sense that there was a norm that there's been a departure from, that there was a previous era where people felt a little bit more stable or a little bit more positive about American politics. It could be the case, though I think there's some early evidence that young people are very excited about Kamala Harris's candidacy. Which is kind of funny. I'm a middle-aged lady, and I love the fact that they're talking about Kamala Harris as a young person right now in politics. But she's still 40 years older than most of my students. So to them, I think politics is still mostly a game for an older set. But I do think that younger people seem to be really excited about it.
Well, she is a young person compared to Trump and Biden, so that's what they mean. I think that she
That's
said.
true, right? I'll take it. If she's young, I.
There you go. I'll take that too. Trust me. So the question is whether or not democracy is on the ballot. When we come forward, I guess, political scientist and Professor Susan Williams-Barnt will get her analysis on the state of our democracy. I've said many times I believe this. I suspect she probably does. We'll see. If she doesn't, we can debate that too. I've talked many times about the fragility of our democracy, and there are any number of things that I regard as a threat to our democracy. I don't just mean Donald Trump stealing nuclear secrets and putting them in his bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. Poverty is a threat to this democracy. Climate change, global warming are threats to this democracy. This gap between the have-gots and the have-nots, and poverty and income inequality and economic immobility, all those things are threats to this democracy. So we'll talk about the threat to this fragile democracy, and we'll talk about the ways in which Professor McWilliams-Barnt sees democracy on the ballot. You heard Otis Moss III's take earlier in this program, and now you will hear her take when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
Securing your firearms protects lives. Pick up your free gun safety lock at select LA County libraries and hospitals. Learn more about other gun safety measures you can take to keep our families and communities safe. Visit lacountygunsafety.org or call 1-833-540-0473 for more resources on gun safety. Together, we can save lives.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code PATH to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code PATH for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code PATH for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley in conversation with political scientist and Professor Susan Williams-Barnt, who I'm pleased to have on in part 2 of our dialogue today about whether or not democracy is on the ballot. It seems to me that there's no doubt about the question. Democracy is on the ballot. Tell me, Professor, the ways in which you see it uniquely being on the ballot.
Yeah, well, Tavis, you're talking to somebody who believes that democracy is always on the ballot.
Sure.
You know, anytime there's a ballot, people's lives depend on that ballot. Anytime there's a ballot, people's civil rights depend on that ballot. Anytime there's a ballot, who is going to make decisions and for whom they're going to make the decisions is on the ballot. And this election is no exception to that rule. But I guess I also think, and this echoes what you said just a minute ago, that voting and elections just aren't enough for achieving democracy. They're not enough, and they never have been. I picked up an old saying somewhere along the way that when it comes to democracy, voting is the period at the end of what should be a very long sentence.
I like that.
And yeah, and what I have always taken that to mean is that democracy requires more than elections and voting. It requires some amount of social trust and toleration. It requires everyday work. It requires certain kinds of habits of mind and heart and faith and commitment. And those are not things that can be, that they don't rise or fall with any check on a ballot box.
Yeah. You heard me talk earlier about the fact that, in my mind, to my view, our democracy is quite fragile at the moment. If you combine my view that we're looking at and wrestling with and reckoning with the fragility of our democracy, if you combine that with the argument that President Biden and others have made that Donald Trump represents an existential threat to democracy, that's a real problem. That's a conundrum. If the democracy is already fragile and this other guy represents an existential threat to it, then democracy, one has to conclude, while it may always be on the ballot, it's on the ballot in a little bit different way. The frame is a little different this time if you buy those two arguments. I'm not saying you have to, but to the extent you do or don't, talk to me.
That's right. Well, let's be clear. Political scientists like me have been worried about the weakening state of democracy in America for a long time. And, well before, since I became a political scientist, and probably since longer than I've been alive. And that's for lots of reasons, some of which you mentioned, and they move from the rise of an administrative state to the collapse of unions, to the perpetuation of racial discrimination, to the decline of membership in civic associations and clubs, to weakening political parties, to the decimation of campaign finance regulation. Everything that's happening in this election is somehow connected to and has been opened up by those broader anti-democratic forces and others. So I think you're exactly right. If you have an already weakened system, a certain kind of shock is much more dangerous in that weakened system than it would be in a very strong system. I'm still of the mind that it's a kind of bad news, good news situation for this election. I think the bad news is that this election won't be the single thing that saves democracy in America. The good news is probably that this election won't be the single thing that ruins democracy in America. But that means that the big picture news, and I don't know, Tavis, if you think this is good news or bad news or just the true news, is that democracy is going to require a lot of work one way or another to be reinvigorated and to be saved and to be perpetuated in the United States.
As we said in the Black church, I just say amen to that. And that's why I love your quote earlier, that democracy and voting is the period at the end of a very long sentence. It's just one piece of the puzzle. So no, I couldn't concur more with what you've just said. Let me ask you this. If ostensibly, and I think that's the key word, if ostensibly we believe as Americans that democracy is paramount and worth protecting, if we believe that ostensibly, then how do we juxtapose these millions of voters who will check the box for Donald Trump, who is clearly an example of one who has pushed back against the notion of law and orders and the Constitution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You take my point. If we all believe that democracy matters, let me put it that way. If we all believe that democracy matters, then how do you explain that so many tens of millions of Americans would vote in a way that is contrary to that notion, to that formulation? Does that make sense?
That makes total sense to me, because, one way you could, in a somewhat naive way, I think, be hopeful is to say, okay, even though there are a lot of anti-democratic forces out there, when you do surveys of Americans, like an overwhelming number of Americans, no matter what their political party or affiliation, say that they believe in democracy and that they believe that democracy is under threat. And I think it's important to remember that even if there's a lot of chaos out there, and I think there is, Americans think we're all fighting for democracy. The challenge with something like Trumpism is that often people are misled into thinking that they're acting in the service of democracy when they're not. That's not a new thing in American politics. Abraham Lincoln's first speech that he gave when he was a really young man in about 1838, so, almost 20 years before the Civil War, he says a lot of Americans think that they're being democratic, but they're really being lawless. And the danger in democracy, and one of the reasons that democracy is always fragile, is that it's really easy for people in a democratic society to mistake mob rule for democratic rule. And I think that's probably a version of that is playing out in Trumpism and in related parts of American democracy right now. And let's be also clear, Tavis, it's not just about individual voters. There are people in positions of power who are would-be oligarchs. I heard them recently called broligarchs, which I really like, who are actively trying to undermine democracy. So even if most Americans say that they believe in democracy, there are people in positions of power who are perfectly comfortable saying publicly now that they don't believe in democracy, and that should really worry us.
This is unpopular to say to some and scary to say to others, and yet neither of those warnings stops me from saying what I'm getting ready to say. And it is simply this, that my read of history, Professor Susan McWilliams-Barnes, suggests to me that there is no empire in the history of the world that at some point that did not have its comeuppance. There has been a reckoning. There has been a reckoning for every empire in the history of the world. And I don't know if it's our arrogance, our hubris, our wrapping ourselves in this notion of American exceptionalism. I don't know. But for some reason, we don't even want to believe that our democracy is as fragile as it is. We don't want to believe that we're on the precipice. We don't want to believe that there's a reckoning coming for us as well as it's come for every other empire in the history of the world. Why am I prefacing it that way? Because, and there's no naivete in asking this question, if every empire in the history of the universe has had its comeuppance, has had its own reckoning, then what happens to a so-called democracy, and I call it an experiment in democracy? I was talking to one of our contributors earlier today. We have a Madisonian framework for democracy, but we ain't quite there yet. In fact, if I had the time, I could argue that we have become an oligarchy, a plutocracy. I ain't got time to get there. But we're not as yet a democracy. I call it an experiment in democracy. And frankly, we're still a rather young democracy. Even after all these years, as you well know, you teach this stuff every day. But here's the question I'm pressing toward. If every empire in the history of the world eventually has its reckoning, then what happens to a democracy when half of the people don't believe in the fundamental tenets and principles of democracy in the republic?
Well, you're right. It's not just that every empire collapses, but every republic collapses. And that's not because there's anything particularly weak about republics. It's just that we're human beings and we're mortal beings, and the things that we make, which include political societies, have the faults and failures that we do as a species. And there's no way around that. No regime is going to last forever, just like no individual human is going to last forever. And just like, and I really think James Baldwin is in so many ways for me, my kind of like
your North Star. Yeah.
Right. And James Baldwin says of Americans in particular, Americans don't like to imagine our individual death. And that's part of our broader failure to confront the weaknesses of our own political state.
Yeah.
That in fact, we don't want to believe that we're mortal just like everybody else. And that on some level, American exceptionalism on a really deep level is about denying our mortality as Americans. I don't know how deep you want to get there, but I think Baldwin, as always, is really smart about that.
No, that's you just made a deep point. You said you don't ever be scared to go deep with me now. I'll take it. That is a deep and powerful point. And let me just add, by the way, any white woman that ever tells me that James Baldwin is her North Star, you all right with me, sister. You are all right with me if James Baldwin is your North Star. So let's just go a little deeper. We got a little time. Unpack a bit more the frame you just put us in.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think that it's no coincidence that the same tech bros right now who are quite literally trying to come up with technology to avoid dying are the people who are actively fighting against democracy. I think Baldwin would see that and say, kind of game over, I told you so. I guess I wonder what that means for ordinary people, though. We can say that in theory and understand these deep psychological currents, but then the question becomes, well, if you care about democracy and you care about the republic and you care about the experiment, and I agree with you that it's an experiment, what do you do in the face of all of these cultural headwinds that are blowing against the true reckoning with ourselves and the true reckoning with our politics and the goal of achieving something that's more democratic than it is now?
Yeah. I said this first on my program many days ago, quoting someone who had tweeted this out. And I predicted then that it wouldn't take Donald Trump long to adopt that narrative. And the narrative was one of his followers who was arriving in Milwaukee for the convention and pushed out the following. And it's not an exact quote, but it's pretty close. The audience may recall when I said this on the air, reading it at the time, which I don't have in front of me right now. White woman, Republican, delegate in Milwaukee, said that Donald Trump just took a bullet for this country. And if you're not voting for him, F you. That was her tweet. Donald Trump just took a bullet for this country. And if you're not voting for him, then F you. In the last 48 hours, as we've all seen, 72 hours, Donald Trump has now taken to saying, I took a bullet for democracy. I told y'all this was coming. I knew it wouldn't be long. He was smart enough not to do it in his major speech at the RNC. But he can't resist saying, I took a bullet for democracy. Can't resist it now, any more than Joe Biden could resist telling us repeatedly, I'm the greatest president since FDR. I mean, let somebody else say that, Mr. President. You don't need to say that. And so he couldn't resist himself from saying it any more than Donald Trump can stop himself from saying now, I took a bullet for democracy. When we talk about democracy being on the ballot, and now Donald Trump has connected the ballot to the bullet and suggests to us that he took a bullet for democracy, you respond to that kind of verbiage, that kind of narrative, that kind of hyperbole in what way, Professor Susan McWilliams-Barnes?
Well, I mean, obviously, Donald Trump's going to say that for so many reasons, not the least of which is he's deeply insecure about the fact that he isn't somebody who ever fought for our country in a meaningful way, not in the military, not really in public service, not in his ordinary life. And so this allows him to pretend like he's been selfless all the way down. I think that Donald Trump has a lot of his power because Donald Trump has had a lot of staying power. You think about people who've been around for several decades. Donald Trump survived the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, Ted, he's still around. Think of all the things that have changed in our country since then. I think on some really elemental level, he's tapping into, and his voters really like the idea that he can somehow survive it all. Yeah. So I agree. The bullet is just the latest part of a story here that he's telling about himself, that he's bigger in some ways than the country. And of course, that's the most anti-democratic sentiment that you could have. None of us is bigger than the country. None of us is the country. And I think we should be worried anytime someone says anything like that.
Robert Menendez, the senator from New Jersey who was just found guilty in that trial, has announced that he will step down under pressure from Democrats at the end of August. That news just broke. He will step down at the end of August. Just getting that out there right quick. It's all over the news now that he will step away. Now he's been found guilty, and Democrats have been on him about get out of here. He just said he will get out at the end of August. I've got 60 seconds left. I got to make room for James Clyburn on the other side, Susan McWilliams-Barnes. But my last question very quickly is, we talked about Donald Trump a moment ago. Let me ask you whether or not you think this notion that democracy is on the ballot is a winning theme. Is it a winning message, or is it too esoteric? Joe Biden tried to advance that message. We'll see what Kamala Harris does, whether she sticks with that or comes up with her own messaging. But is that message, even though it may be true, that democracy is on the ballot, is it a winning message? Is it too esoteric?
The word democracy is esoteric and abstract. I think you got to put it into language of ordinary life. Democracy means your life every day, the lives of your neighbors, the life of your kids. That's what's on the ballot this time and every time. Democracy is an abstract thing, but it is also how we live every day. And that's how I think we should talk about politics always, as a question about how we live with each other every day.
Her piece is titled, "Is Democracy on the Ballot?" Her name is Susan McWilliams-Barnes. That's spelled B as in boy, A-R-D-N-D as in David T, B-A-R-N-D-T. Not easy to pronounce, not easy to spell either. B-A-R-N-D-T. Susan McWilliams-Barnes, a political scientist and professor, who's the author of this article called "Is Democracy on the Ballot?" So there are two great conversations, one with her, the other with Otis Moss III earlier in today's program. I am pleased to have had both of them on this program. Professor, good to have you on. Thanks for the piece. All the best to you.
Thanks, Tavis.
When we come forward, James Clyburn on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump says he received no warnings there could be a possible shooter at his Pennsylvania rally earlier this month. Last night, Trump was joined by his VP pick, J.D. Vance, on Fox News, where they discussed the shooting. Both men agreed it was very lucky that Trump wasn't more badly injured. They also said someone needs to be held responsible for the slow reaction time from authorities. NBA legend LeBron James will be the Team USA flag bearer at the opening ceremonies of the Summer Olympics Friday in Paris. The African-American great was nominated for the role by fellow NBA great Steph Curry. James will be the first men's basketball player to carry the flag. Team USA's female flag bearer will be announced today. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Generators aren't something you turn on each day, but when you do, they must be reliable. SoCal businesses have turned to Duthie Power for almost 60 years to keep emergency power systems maintained and serviced. See the generator experts at DuthiePower.com. That's DUTHIE Power.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
At age 39, even in the summertime, LeBron James proved he can still deliver when the game is on the line. LeBron scored the last 11 points for Team USA to help pull out a 4-point win over Germany in an exhibition game in London. It was the final tune-up for Team USA before the Summer Olympics in Paris. LeBron finished with 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. Team USA was 5-0 in their practice games. They head to Paris today. First Olympic game is Sunday against Serbia, led by a center named Nikola Jokic. Vice President Kamala Harris was presidential Monday morning at the White House. She welcomed a group of NCAA athletes and coaches who won championships on the Division I, II, and III levels during the 2023-24 season. Harris stepped in to honor the athletes in place of President Joe Biden, who's at home in Delaware recovering from COVID. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Ariva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Ariva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. Environmental justice is racial justice.
Environmental justice is social justice.
This is KBLA Talk 1580.
Get immersed in new worlds and ideas with Audible. Explore an incredible selection of audiobooks, podcasts, and originals, all in one easy app. There's more to imagine when you listen. Sign up for a free trial at audible.com.
Hey, John, why so glum?
I just got let go. The company's downsizing. This is the third
Hey guys,
time in the last
do you want male performance in the bedroom and do you want it now? Get it in 47 seconds or less. For the first time, you can have instant male enhancement. Introducing Knox 47, the topical male enhancement that works in 47 seconds or less. Satisfaction guaranteed. Finally, after years of scientific research, our proprietary formula will allow you to perform in the bedroom like never before. Just imagine that little blue pill on steroids. No reason to settle and wait when you can get instant performance now. Forget about pills and potions that make you wait hours or up to 30 days to work. That's yesterday's news. Knox 47 is brand new. The hottest thing for men. And you don't need a prescription. Call now and get your free supply for a limited time.
To find out how to get Knox 47 for free, call now. 800-617-1621. That's 800-617-1621. Free bottles for limited time. Call 800-617-1621. That's 800-617-1621.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
It is always my great delight to be in conversation with the one and only James Clyburn. Always delighted to have him on this program. He's always so kind to take my phone call. I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm glad to have you tuned into this last half hour of our program today. Congressman, good to have you back, sir. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing fine. Thank you so much for having me.
It's good to have you on. I said earlier on today's program that you said many days ago that while you were a staunch supporter of President Joe Biden, if, in fact, he decided to step aside, you were all in for Kamala Harris. You said that pretty much in front of everybody else, and now they're all lining up now. What do you make of it?
Well, you know, I think if you really respect a person, like I do Joe Biden, you have to really respect the judgment. Joe Biden gets the nomination to be our standard bearer, and when he was nominated, he named as his running mate Kamala Harris. And he said at the time, after extensive vetting, he had come to the conclusion that she could step in at a moment's notice if anything were to happen to him. Well, I trust his judgment. So when he called me on Sunday to tell me that he was going to withdraw from the race, I said to him at the time, I would hope that you will maintain your good judgment, and when you withdraw, please endorse Kamala. He said to me that he was going to put out a statement on his withdrawal, but promised me that 30 minutes afterwards he would let his wishes be known. And he did put out a second judgment. So I appreciate him for that, because if you recall, all of the folks who were pushing this thing was talking about open up the process, have a mini primary or truncated convention. Well, you and I have been around long enough to know. Now, you ain't been around as long as I have, but, you know, at least you've read about this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I've lived out of it. And I remember 1968, open convention in Chicago, and it got us Richard Nixon. I remember 1972, open convention down in Florida, Miami, Florida.
Yep.
It got us one state in the District of Columbia, and we had a fight on the convention floor in 1980 when Kennedy contested Carter.
That's right.
And it led to his defeat. You have floor fights on the convention, you ain't going to have much success at the polls, because when you hold your convention, you should be putting yourself on display for the American people to get some feeling for what they can expect from your party if you got in control. And if all they see is a bunch of fussing and fighting, then they are not going to look too kindly upon us.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to see this process play itself out. It was not to shut out anybody, because if you were to read the rules, 2 or 3 people said to me, well, why you want to shut the process off? I said, it's not shut off. The Rules Committee said to put in place a process that says anybody's name can go onto the convention floor. All you need to do is get 300 delegates, no more than 50 from any one state, and you can have your name put in contention, and you can run the whole mini primary if that's what you want to call it. So that's where we are. The issue was wide open. It looks like of the 1,950 she needs, she's already gotten 2,500.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty decisive.
Let me circle back to this notion of judgment. I'm going to put you on the spot here. I'm not trying to embarrass you or humiliate you. Quite the opposite. But you talked earlier about judgment, and that's a serious word. That you trust Joe Biden's judgment. Well, apparently Joe Biden trusts your judgment too. Again, not trying to embarrass you, but you were the one. The story is now part of political lore. We know that you went backstage, you went somewhere, and you told Joe Biden you need to announce that if you win, you're going to put a black woman on the Supreme Court. He made that commitment, and he did it. He then said, I'll pick a woman as my running mate, and you got involved in that conversation. You told him on Sunday when he called you, not many people got a heads-up phone call, James Clyburn did, that I'm getting ready to stand down, and you said, Mr. President, I've trusted your judgment, and my advice to you is to support Kamala Harris. And he told you, I'll do that, James Clyburn. So it's not just you trusting his judgment, he trusts your judgment. Talk to me just about what it means to be at the level that you've ascended to over all these years, to have folk trust your judgment in that way, and to use that judgment to recommend to white brothers and sisters that they advance black people in the process.
Well, you know, growing up in the South, some things you really learn early. You know, this past Sunday, on the day that all this was taking place, I was celebrating my 84th birthday.
Happy belated. Happy belated.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I've been around here a long time, and I've been interacting in politics since the age of 12. I was 12 years old when I got elected president of my NAACP Youth Council. And so I've been in this process. John Lewis and I met as 19-year-old college students. We were founding members of SNCC. A lot of people don't know that about me, but I was one of the founders of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And so what I've always done is really try to study not just what the issue is, but what led to the issue? Why did people do what they did? Why did this guy say what he said? And so I have been studying this thing for a long, long time. And so when I really got to Congress, if you recall, coming from little old South Carolina, and we had a big class. Most of the people in that class came from California. I ran for president of the freshman class, and people says, "You from South Carolina? Look at all these." And one of the people running was from California. Well, I got elected president of the freshman class to serve for the second session. You do that by really learning people, developing relationships, and you try to make sure that you always keep your word. That was the one thing that Joe Biden would often say to me. I remember we were having a long ride one day on Air Force One. He said to me, he said, I wish you could have met my dad because you remind me so much of him. He talks about his father all the time. And here's this man, only 3 years my junior, telling me that I remind him so much of his dad.
Yeah.
It's because, as he said to me, your integrity is really sitting on your shoulder everywhere you go.
Yeah.
So that's just the way you do it. You develop a relationship with people. That's why I was so effective as whip, because people knew that I would not ask them to cast a vote if I thought it would do them some harm in their districts.
Two other quick questions. I got to let you run. I know you got a tight schedule here.
Sure.
Two other things right quick. News just breaks from Reuters. Reuters is reporting now that the former Attorney General Eric Holder is running Kamala Harris's VP vetting process. What do you expect in terms of her ultimate choice for VP?
Well, it looks like the top of there are 5 people being vetted.
Right.
4 of them are governors and one the senator from Arizona, Keller.
Yep.
Now, Keller has a lot going for him because the border state and what border issues are going to be in this campaign. He's got a lot going for him. I'm a guy that's a little bit partial to Roy Cooper from North Carolina. He is being vetted. Josh Shapiro, great guy from Pennsylvania, is being vetted. He's a governor as well. Pritzker in Illinois. And I think Whitmer up in Michigan. All of them are good people.
Yep.
And I would hope that a governor I'm partial to it because she is a child of the Senate, and we ought to get somebody that from the governorship because the governors sometimes feel a little bit left out of this thing. They think that the Senate. Joe Biden was from the Senate, and she was from the Senate, and the governors never really felt a part of this. I think they do a lot of bringing our party together if she were to select a governor as a running mate.
Last question, 30 seconds. What is the primary reason why you believe that your candidate, Kamala Harris, can beat Donald Trump?
Because she is a prosecutor, and she can prosecute the case. I think that Donald Trump is really has shown that he cannot do well with prosecutors. And she will be the 3rd African-American woman prosecuting him, and I think she'll have as much success as the other 2.
Congressman Clyburn, always honored, sir, when you take my phone call and agree to come on this program and share your insights. We'll do it again, I'm sure, between now and November. But for now, thank you for your time, sir. All the best to you, my friend.
Okay, Tavis. Always good to talk to you.
Likewise. Stay strong. More when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement. Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. Just a few short months ago, California Attorney General Rob Bonta filed 11 felony charges against Diana Taran, an assistant district attorney for Los Angeles County. The charges allege that Taran unlawfully accessed confidential computer data, including police officer files in 2018, and continued to use them after joining the DA's office in 2021. Ironically, Taran, who is now on administrative leave, oversaw the Public Integrity Division responsible for handling high-profile cases of police misconduct and public corruption, including the charges brought against LA City Council member Kern Price last June. To be sure, the case against Price has raised plenty of eyebrows. Indeed, one noted legal scholar has said publicly, and I quote, "Everything about this prosecution reeks," close quote. Could AG Bonta, with aspirations to become California governor, be punishing Taran for her role in DA George Gascon's police accountability agenda to curry favor with police unions? Could DA Gascon be using the case against Price to showcase his tough stance on crime and political corruption as he vies to retain his seat as DA? Honestly, I have no idea, but here's what I know for sure. Kern Price has been elected and re-elected by thousands of voters, mostly black and brown, who stand to be further disenfranchised if this matter is not handled correctly, which is why it matters to us at KBLA Talk 1580. When the prosecutor is being prosecuted, it seems to me that at the very least, there ought to be a thorough, top-to-bottom, independent review of all cases under Diana Taran's purview to ensure that none of these cases have been tainted. Justice and fundamental fairness demand no less, if public trust truly matters. And I hope it does. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Tavis Smiley. We welcome your feedback.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
You know, as many of you know, before I was elected as vice president, before I was elected as United States Senator, I was the elected Attorney General, as I've mentioned, of California, and before that I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
I'm Tavis Smiley, and that was some sound of Kamala Harris saying that I know Donald Trump's type. You just heard me in conversation with the former Majority Whip, James Clyburn, out of South Carolina, saying that he believes that Kamala Harris can best Donald Trump because she would be the third black woman to prosecute him. You took his point, right? He's talking about Fonnie Willis down in Georgia, Letitia James up in New York State, and now Kamala Harris, the third black woman to prosecute him. Say nothing of Alvin Bragg, who not a sister but a black man who successfully won his case against Donald Trump. So there are a number of black prosecutors who've had their say, had their moment against Donald Trump, and their track record so far is pretty good. Fonnie Willis's case hasn't completely turned the corner yet, But that's the one case, even if he's elected, he can't do much about. The other cases he can make sort of go away to some extent, but not the case in the state of Georgia. It's not a federal case. But these black folk, Fonnie Willis and Letitia James and Alvin Bragg, have had a pretty good run at Donald Trump and done quite well. And so the point that Congressman Clyburn was making is that she's in good standing as a black woman prosecutor up against Donald Trump, and he's very confident that she can pull that off. So Kamala Harris right now is speaking live at a rally. Just walked off stage. Okay, just wrapped a rally in Wisconsin, so she is on the campaign trail. Just did a big rally in Wisconsin, so she's out there on the stump now, getting ready to lock down this nomination and do what she needs to do between now and November. Our remaining moments on today's program when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
One more update and then some programming notes, and we will wrap today's program. In case you did not hear, Robert Menendez, senator from New Jersey, who was found guilty some days ago, has now publicly said that he will step away from the Senate at the end of August. What you don't want when you're running a campaign to try to win the White House is for Republicans to put a convicted felon around your neck. Never mind the fact that their nominee is a convicted felon, Mr. Trump. You don't want to give them any ammunition, and so they don't want to have to be responding to why they've got a sitting Democratic senator from a major state like New Jersey who is convicted of crimes. And so again, it's just interesting to me that their nominee is a convicted felon, but Democrats don't want any part of that storyline. They don't want any part of that in their narrative as they try to do the impossible over the next 15 weeks, which is to push Kamala Harris across the finish line. Tomorrow night, speaking of the White House, the president gives his address to the nation. The White House announced it earlier today, so we look forward to seeing and hearing what the president has to say tomorrow night about why he decided to step aside. It'll be, I'm sure, a moment. I'm sure there'll be a lot of tears for those who have been Biden supporters and Biden fans. Tomorrow night should be an interesting moment for the nation, and certainly, again, for those who have stood by him when he goes into some detail about why he made the decision that we all heard about on Sunday, that we've been unpacking every hour of this program in some way, shape, or form since Sunday, and we'll unpack it again on Thursday morning, Thursday on this program when we get a chance to hear what he has to say Wednesday night. Our lead guest on the Thursday program is some guy named Chris Matthews. Remember Chris Matthews? We're going to play hardball, y'all. We're going to play hardball on Thursday in our first hour with Chris Matthews, formerly of MSNBC. I'm bringing Chris out of retirement. He has so much to say, and he's covered these issues better than most over the years. So we will lead off Thursday's program following the president's address tomorrow night, playing hardball with Chris Matthews. We close today with a little Beyonce. Why? Because we've been trying to figure out what Kamala's theme song would be, and I'm told in Wisconsin she walked out to Freedom from Beyonce. So that may very well be every president, every candidate needs a theme song. You recalled Barack Obama. Remember his? Signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours from Stevie Wonder. Bill Clinton, Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow. So it appears that Beyonce, her Freedom track, may be Kamala Harris's tune. So we'll play that for Kamala and for all you Beyonce fans. And back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until then, thanks for tuning in. And as always, keep the faith.
Keep on running, cause the winner don't quit on themselves.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump says he received no warnings there could be a possible shooter at his Pennsylvania rally earlier this month. Last night, Trump was joined by his VP pick, J.D. Vance, on Fox News, where they discussed the shooting. Both men agreed it was very lucky that Trump wasn't more badly injured. They also said someone needs to be held responsible for the slow reaction time from authorities. NBA legend LeBron James will be the Team USA flag bearer